I'd like to welcome everyone today. I'm President Garcia Morales, and I'd like to call this regular board meeting of June 8th to order. The time is 5:03 p.m. I'd like to remind everybody to please silence your electronic devices. And we'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather, which is territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mawapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. We're going to move on to item 1.01, the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Trustee Williams. Trustee Williams?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to move on to 1.02, adoption of the agenda. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that for the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Williams.
A second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Before I ask for a motion to vote, I want to recognize that Trustee Guzman is in the ether. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we've got that early, but I'm glad that you're here. And then counsel here, good. You're okay. Thank you. Counsel, are you also on the line?
I'm present, President.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, now that we have full-on attendance here, I'd like to call the vote. We have a motion by Trustee Bustamante Adams, a second by Trustee Williams. And Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you. Colleagues, the motion passes 7-0. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Before I open the consent agenda, I'd like to ensure that anybody who is in the public who'd like to provide public comment does so by submitting a yellow card. If you haven't done so, please do so now. We have one person who has signed up in advance. I don't have any additional yellow cards. It's Mr. Bayless. Are you here today? Hi, welcome. You can bring that closer to you.
Hello, ladies of the board, Dr. Jara, James Bayless for the record. So mainly I just wanted to address the disabilities part B part and the UNLV grant and the title 3 for English learning. Because if all three of those grants apply to my kid, he was actually up here last year when those grants were coming up last year. Most adequately actually spoke for himself about what he received with your guys' money. And we've still got crickets since then. So situations at hand, as you guys know, I've been doing some digging into CCSD and all of its employees. Are you aware that the grant that goes to UNLV, would that be maybe how all of our unqualified teachers handling SPED all have degrees from UNLV? Every teacher that came from Florida that definitely shouldn't have went to UNLV went to UNLV. So it's kind of weird considering, again, most of your special needs people that aren't even have degrees to be handling special needs kids, which goes to Part B once again. And it's ironically that the lady that wrote the grant, Ms. Cortez, you don't even have qualifications to be handling special needs, so she shouldn't be able to write a grant for him either.
Mr. Bayless, I know I don't have to remind you to please not reference a specific individual or members of the board. Please keep your comments in regards.
Well, her name's on the grant. Okay.
Please keep your remarks.
I got
Thank you.
But the situation is she's not even qualified to be handling special needs children, so she shouldn't be asking for money for them. Even Mr. Stone agreed on that one. So, situation at hand also with the legislature. I'm sorry that 256 didn't pass. Yeah, a lot of my information will still be able to go out there. And as far as the legislature world, I've actually been quite amused on listening to a lot of people refer to CCSD how the greatest and how no kids left behind and all that stuff because you forgot mine. So you really can't make the reference of no kid left behind when you forgot one. That would be fraud by misrepresentation. And that's also actually one of the things you wrote in on one of your grants. I think it was the English Title III learning. No kid, yeah, you forgot one. And he, ironically, was for that grant. So for all those grants to be for special needs children and you forgot one, I don't think any of those should pass until you guys decide you want to actually do something with the kids with that money, not just pocket it, because I know the legislature has been asking a lot, because they all know me and my son's situation. They've known us for quite a few years. And it's quite ironic that, again, a lot of people have brought to their attention. And it's just strange because, again, we'll be addressing something in public comment that you guys are going to love. And it stems to the reason why we've been here going around and around for the past year. You know, federal compliance sucks.
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. I don't see any yellow cards or additional individuals who signed up for consent agenda. At this time, colleagues. Hi, welcome. What's your name? Ms. Pompa, I have you under items, public comment on items not listed as agenda items. That's item 5.01. That's at the end of, yes, at the end of the agenda. You're good to go. We've got you covered. All right, thank you. Okay, colleagues, at this time, I am seeking, if there are no other questions, I'm seeking a motion. Trustee Williams.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Brooks.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Colleagues, at this time, I'd like for us to, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your vote. Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. We are going to move on to the warrants. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. Ratified warrants as listed in the bills payable, transmittal, and board memorandum number 20-22-23 in the total amount of $208,978,193.29.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Now, colleagues, we're going to move on to item 3.01. That's the formative Focus 2024 Strategic Plan Update. Nevada System of Higher Education Remediation Rates. I'm going to move it to Dr. Barton. Thank you, Dr. Barton. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. With Mike Barton for the record. Tonight, this evening, I'm joined by Ms. Gia Moore and Ms. Amy Adams in this presentation. But tonight, we're focused on the Nevada System of Higher Education Remediation Rates Indicator that's in Focus 2024, the annual report to the board. This does align to access and equity as it pertains to our strategic plan and the vision of the Board of School Trustees. And the last time trustees heard a report on this metric was in 2019 of December and then June of 2022. And just again, when this was last presented to the board in June of 2022, you may remember that this is not a metric that the district owns. This is an outside external metric. And as a result, there's been some changes at NSHE where they shifted away from a remediation model to a co-requisite model. So you'll hear more details on that this evening and how we're collaborating with NSHE on what the next level of engagement for accountability is around these metrics. But Madam President, with your permission, I'll transition to Ms. Moore.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Gia Moore, Director of College and Career Readiness and School Choice for the record. What we bring to you this evening is a theory of action that was presented to you in the previous presentation. And while we have done significant work in monitoring systems to increase enrollment in rigorous coursework, we recognize that much more systemic work is needed to be done and a greater focus on high quality Tier 1 instruction and Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. This will be reflected in our revised theory of action later on in this presentation. So here are multiple strategies implemented to achieve student success, but I'm going to highlight just a few. One of them is to use academic planning strategically to ensure student awareness of dual credit opportunities and ensure that counselors communicate regularly with families and students regarding dual enrollment or dual credit opportunities for specific schools. So for example, strategic collaboration occurred with all high school principals, curriculum APs, and counselors this year to build more focused students' pathways to access the necessary coursework that was available and aligned with post-secondary goals. So it is our job to provide students with that toolkit, which is that coursework for success later. The next piece is to partner with NG institutions to address challenges in qualifying teachers to teach dual credit courses. So that has been a challenge, but we have made some progress, significant progress in addressing those issues with our NG partners. And we are implementing different models of credentialing, as well as, identifying a common goal to ensuring access. So that's a key piece to credentialing our teachers, is that once they're credentialed, that expands our ability for students to have access to this coursework. So for example, this summer, I'll give you an example of a credentialing model with one of our NG partners. For teachers that may not have the necessary credentials in order to teach English 101, they're going to be taking a course this summer, which will give them the ability to be able to teach that. So that's just one of many examples that we have going on where we're expanding that access. The other strategy is to expand course offerings at high schools to allow for schools to address remediation needs. So again, thank you to our strong NG partners. We've increased dual enrollment opportunities by over 2,000% since the class of 2016. So we went from 1,082 course enrollments to over 24,352. And we'll continue to grow more of these opportunities as we work to refine this program. There's an intentional focus, though, with this work that I wanted to highlight, where we're working on focusing on the students that are first-generation college-going students, underserved populations, and students who express economic need regardless of prior performance. So that has been our focus group over the last couple of years. So as Dr. Barton mentioned, in June of 2019, the Board of Regents, they adopted a policy that eliminates traditional models of remediation and mandates co-requisite support for all degree-seeking students, with a full-scale adoption by fall 2021, and adoption with a strategic goal of improving student success. So that's in their board policy, and it mandates the delivery of co-requisite support for students that would traditionally place in lengthy, unsuccessful models of traditional remediation. So Math 95, English 100E, so those courses that they're taking for no credit. So, and with that, Madam President, with your permission, I would like to allow for Ms. Adams to present some data, additional data, and additional perspective on this work.
Hi, good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. For the record, I am Amy Adams, College and Career Readiness Coordinator. Our next slide is unchanged from last year, and she has a data dashboard, or had a data dashboard that reported the remediation rates, and they had redesigned it. So we are unable to use these same metrics to compare. So we did, on the next slide, we did work with NSHE directly to get some remediation rates that are calculated differently than the ones that were on the NSHE dashboard. And just please know that this data uses a different method of calculation. So there's a lot of different definitions of how you flag a remedial student, whether they're placed or whether they are enrolled in a class. Our comparison data is mixed. You'll see the rate was reducing at CSN, growing at UNLV, and staying relatively constant at UNR. So this does highlight our need because the schools, the institutions are changing to a co-requisite model. We need other methods to start thinking about how are we ensuring that we measure students are prepared for college. So there's some other metrics. We could look at college persistence data once they get there, et cetera. And then the next slide is blank because there's no data, large district data available to compare with CCSD. We have an issue with reading remediation rates because, again, there's no standard definition of what makes a remedial course or what's classified as a remedial course. And so the metrics differ by state, by institution, by system, et cetera. So therefore, we have a hard time comparing to other systems. And a lot of other systems are moving towards a co-requisite model also, so they don't have this remediation data because they're changing the way they remediate students. And with your permission, I'm going to pass it back to Gia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Gia Moore again for the record. So this brings us to our challenges, successes, and lessons learned regarding remediation. And so the first challenge that I want to highlight is the lack of remediation data, as we presented at the beginning of this presentation, to a shift of a co-requisite model. So this obviously doesn't mean that the need for remediation goes away. We clearly understand that piece. But what it does mean is that we need to focus more on systemic efforts to continue to provide those supports to students to mitigate their need for remediation once they enter in college. So this leads us to our challenges, which we identified surrounding a lack of consistency with Tier 1 instruction and MTSS. And lastly, in our challenges, making sure that there's consistency in how master schedules are designed so that we are maximizing opportunities for our students. So I'll refer back to the comment I made earlier where we're working really strategically with schools on how to design master schedules and how to maximize their ability to offer advanced level coursework and to make sure that we're also using data to identify those students that wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity. So I wanted to highlight the expansion of dual enrollment partnerships with NC institutions and our prioritization of first-generation college-going students, as I mentioned before, and underrepresented student groups. I think that this is an important piece to mention because with that expansion of those efforts and being targeted with that, our end goal is to make sure that with that exposure to that college-level coursework, so we're trying to target those students that just have never maybe thought that that was going to be an option for them. It gets those jitters out. It takes away that mystique of what college is and diminishes that idea. And I speak from this personally of you don't have the ability to maybe be successful in college because you're the first in your family to be able to do that. So I think with these efforts, we're slowly diminishing that mindset of that from I can't or that's not a possibility to I certainly can. So I would say that that's certainly a success of ours. The implementation of that professional learning that we are doing with schools that's very strategic around this work. Deliberate course sequencing, so working with students instead of talking about coursework as electives, it's about career pathways, it's about college pathways, it's about, I know that if my student's end goal is I want to become a doctor, I need to make sure that they're in that appropriate coursework so that doesn't become a closed door to them upon leaving us when they go into college. So that is some significant work that we're doing. And again, those lessons learned is that really we need to take a more systemic approach in terms of making sure that students are given that high quality Tier 1 instruction, that they're given those opportunities, that we're using data mindfully, particularly, and I believe we mentioned this during our presentation earlier in the year when we were providing updates on AP, IB, CTE, but using those ad hoc reports to identify those students that may not have been otherwise selected for that advanced level coursework, using that data to enroll additional students. So that's been part of our work, significant work over the last year. And that brings us to our newly revised theory of action. Again, as I mentioned, we need some more systemic efforts, and that's what we're working diligently on as a district. So based upon our work and findings in working to reduce the remediation needs of students, we have a revised theory of action, which is If we provide high-quality Tier 1 instruction and Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for students through MTSS and effective monitoring tools for guiding student progress, remediation rates will decrease. So our next steps, and again, a lot of this work is already in place, it's in motion. We'll continue to refine and identify other ways where we can make progress in this area. But one of those steps is providing those ad hoc reports, as I just mentioned, and then engaging our leaders and educators in really strong professional learning around Tier 1 instruction, MTSS, and master scheduling. And we'll continue specifically, I know with my team, we'll be working with every school again in the fall on that master scheduling piece and how to get more students in that advanced level coursework. And then ensure course enrollment corrections are made by the start of the school year. So that's been really important. We've had, for the first time, we've had a very specific and strategic master scheduling timeline. That means that as a district, as a collective, our expectation is that all of our students, almost 100%, will have a full schedule well before the school year starts. So we're not going to have students that are waiting for a schedule change or waiting to be put into a class. That's instruction missed. So those have been some real shifts that we've made as a district. And then monitoring and supporting master scheduling timeline meetings, as I mentioned, expanding ad hoc reports, which will be our next phase, expanding those into all core courses and grade levels. And then lastly, monitoring student enrollment and identifying gaps in rigorous coursework at our schools and identifying ways where we can increase those opportunities for our students. So, and with that, Madam President, I would like to turn the presentation back to Dr. Barton.
Thank you, Dr. Barton.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Jara. To close out, I know there was a lot of explanation around the metrics this evening, and again, it's an outside metric, but I can tell you that our partnership with NSHE institutions is the strongest it's ever been. They've committed to sitting down with us or calling us to meetings as we're exploring the co-requisite model. What are those right indicators to report out on? And again, a consistent reporting where we can show what the impact is of our efforts in high school. So the team stands ready to address any questions you have this evening and appreciate your time, trustees.
Thank you, Dr. Barton. Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, great job by the team, but really in our schools. Just wanted to highlight a couple things. I know the dual credit, the dual enrollment with UNR, and Nevada State College is unbelievable, and UNLV is growing and improving. But I do want to talk about some of the data points that you see missing. We didn't want to pull it out because obviously the template that was approved by the board on the remediation rates, I want to make sure that we're clear, and we talked about this, that remediation didn't go away when NSHE made those decisions. So one of the things that we have done since 2019-18, we partner with NCAA Clearinghouse. So we're looking at, what we are looking at is persistence, right? We're looking at kids that, because it's a little bit of a measure for us to be able to say when kids go back their second year academically, or there's some financial issues or challenges for kids to stay in college, because our goal is to make sure that when our kids go to college is that they graduate in 4 years, on even 5 years, because the national average for a bachelor's completion is 6.2 years. So that's something we have to measure. That tells you a little bit about remediation. And as you know, that we're still waiting on NDE to approve their college readiness assessment. That has been a long time coming. So we are using other data points that we have control of as we wait for the state to provide us that data, so we can place the proper the students in the proper courses. As also we have invested in the PSAT in 8th and 9th and 10th, 11th. Again, data points. So we're placing children in the right courses, and our educators in our schools and our principals are doing an amazing job with this team. So really proud of the work that's happening here and looking for some immediate success in the years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Jara. And thank you and your team for the work that's taking place. I'm going to move forward with colleagues in the queue. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree in the advancement that is definitely applause for the work that you guys have done as a team. My question is twofold. On the dual credit, it went from 1,100 to 2,400. So what would be a stretch goal for us? And do you have that in mind as far as dual credit is involved, the number of students? And then secondly, as far as the relationship with the NSHE institutions, it appears, and I might be incorrect, so help me, that it has been an easier relationship with UNR than the Southern Nevada institutions. And if you could shed some light on what could we do differently since we're in Southern Nevada.
Dr. Barton? Oh, excuse me. Forgive me. Dr. Jara?
Madam President, members of the board, great question, Trustee Bustamante Adams. I think the expansion and the speed of the expansion in Nevada in UNR has been due to the president, and I think that has been something that is finding opportunities and to help us as he sees a lot of our kids growing there. Nevada State College, we've had some very good meetings as we grow and expand within our programs there. So what we're building specific pathways with each institution. And I think with Nevada State College is I would say their area of expertise in their development is their teacher pipeline, their teacher prep pipeline. So there's more pathways and go deeper instead of broader, to go deeper within the current partnership, and developing an MOA with them is going to be critical. With UNLV, we're growing, and I've had intimate conversations with the president, and the vision there. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I think it's been some institutional culture change that as he's working through with me. But they do have some other areas that they partner with us in our summer camps and summer program, our math. He's looking for other options to provide a different partnership. And it may not just be dual credit, but other ways that his vision to grow. But as I sat in his state of the university, I believe his goal, that I'm looking at Dr. Barton because we were there, at the growth of his goal is to grow at about 100% in the next couple of years. So he is pushing as well at UNLV to help our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Jara. Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you guys for this. You guys have been doing a lot of work. That's really great. I only have one question, actually. So you were talking about, I think it was on slide 13, when you were talking about your challenges and your, things that you guys have been doing. Yes. And you talked about the Tier 1 instruction, sending students down a path that most matches the career that they kind of want to go into, which totally makes sense. My only question is, can that instruction be based on like dual learning for different kind of modalities? And the reason why I ask this is because it's anywhere between 50 to 75% of students when they enter into college end up changing their majors at least once, if not by 3 times, by the time that they're a junior. So my question is, like, can you get it to the point where that instruction helps them, knowing that 50 to 75% of the students that go into these college courses are going to end up changing it anyway?
Yes, Maureen?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Williams, it's a great question, and that's certainly part of our work and our discussions with our schools. I can think of my own experience in changing my major multiple times. I think that one of the things that we're focusing on with our schools is that they need to start earlier having these conversations, for example, at the middle school level. So if you can go back in time and remember about what your ideas were of careers, it was very, very narrow. And I think that what we're trying to do is say that these are the opportunities out there. We're trying to expand their horizons. We're doing experiential learning opportunities where they're going out to business and industry and innovative places and things like that. But what we also want to do is build really good problem solvers and students that have the ability to make good decisions and to be in an innovative environment and things like that. So that's also part of the discussion that we're having with students. But for in general, for students, if they have an aptitude for a certain area, we're trying to use different kinds of tools to identify that. So career building tools and anything that we can do based upon that. But in general, for students, if they have a propensity to think about a particular career pathway, they're usually staying in that family in general.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, okay, you know what? If you're going on to a STEM-based program or program of study, you really need Math 126. And you really need to focus on your math and science electives as being part of that pathway. So when we're building four-year pathways, it's really around the idea of like, in general, I think my end game could be this,
Right.
but at least I'm getting that coursework out of the way and I'm being exposed to that so that I'm not hitting a wall when I leave high school. I know that in my experience in managing, for example, the pre-medical program at Rancho several years ago, one of the things that students would come back and tell us was, I needed to take more rigorous math and I needed to focus more on my chemistry class because those were the things that were very difficult for me. So I think it's just a matter of really having deeper conversations with students, doing more strategic planning, and broadening their horizons on what actually they need to be able to do whatever it is that they desire.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that answer because you know how students are. Sometimes they're like they want to cure the world, and then they get to college and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't be a princess. I don't understand." So, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Dr. Barton, Ms. Moore, and Ms. Adams for this presentation. I just wanted to say that as a former university instructor, I want to say that that blank slide that you had, that was very informative to me because it was always very frustrating to run into the different levels of remedial needs, especially with folks, you know, kids and older students that were coming in from out of state. It just was so hard to really try to align their needs. So I'm really pleased with the work that you're doing here. If you were going to kind of just like, you know, kind of like a down and dirty, the crux of what a co-requisite model looks like, how would you describe that?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Gia Moore for the record. With the co-requisite model, as I mentioned before, you know, traditionally we were placing students in course for no credit if they didn't meet a certain metric, if they didn't meet a certain metric of a placement exam, standardized tests, something like that. So what co-requisite does is it places students in the course that they would normally be in without that course. So let's say I'm going to be now placed in Math 120, but I'm also going to be given those extra supports in order to be successful in that particular course. So it's an expanded version, I guess, of that course, if you will, with those added supports, added tutoring, delving more into what that actual subject matter is, as opposed to if you were just taking the traditional Math 120, there was an expectation that you had that skill set in there. And in our conversations with NC institutions, it's really interesting that even if students typically might meet a metric, let's say that they get an ACT of an 18 or higher or something like that, what they're telling us is that students that may not feel like they're very strong in math are entering into those co-requisite courses because they don't want to struggle right out of the gate, which is typically the case for students when they enter into college. And math, unfortunately, tends to be that gatekeeper. So what they're finding is a lot of students are self-electing to be in those co-requisite courses so they can get that additional assistance.
Thank you so much. And I think that this model, I think this is going to go a long way toward reducing the frustration that a lot of these students feel. And as Dr. Jara had mentioned, as far as going maybe from 6.5 years to maybe the 4-year model or just, you know, incremental. So thank you so much for this work and this presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. I'm really encouraged by the progress that's taking place in our district, especially around post-secondary access, college access, especially with the emphasis. While this item here I know is a requirement, it is calendared, approved by the Board of Trustees, and the format is also approved by the Board of Trustees. What I'm hearing what I'm hearing your team present, Dr. Dara, is really the work that's been ongoing around academic rigor, around systems and scheduling. That's something that was brought up. The strong partnerships with NSHE institutions, and while they may present, sometimes the partnerships require collaboration on both ends, and the entire system of NSHE wants to work with our students, and that's also really encouraging too, that everyone's trying to find ways to support our students. I'm encouraged by that work, and I know that work does not happen overnight. The remediation rates as they were, 3 years ago or 4 years ago is not what they are now today in the future. And knowing with that in mind, that it's going to take time for us to continue to see progress that will, where our students who are in earlier grades will reap, as a community, reap the benefits of this ongoing work by the district, which I just want to highlight again, the great work that's taking place, and also recognizing this work can't happen fast enough. And we have students now who are, preparing to have just recently left our school district. How do we continue to build on what we've done well? And it sounds like this team, your team, Dr. Jara, has, and the individuals in the organization that you've hired, and you all continue to ask yourself this question. So, what else do we build on to support our students? I am less interested in the north versus south complaints. I'm hoping that as a community we all see how this work to support our students with academic rigor benefits students who want to go into the workforce, who want to go into trade schools, who want to pursue a post-secondary path, a college path. And I have a couple of questions, but I have to, the spirit is calling me, and I feel encouraged by this work. Dr. Jara?
I do, Madam. I wanted to say something, Madam President, members of the board. Hopefully I can tie it to yesterday's PGS presentation, because what I'm reminded when I remember the survey, that I think there was a response that educators are overwhelmed in school, right? And I think that was one of the lines. And we understand and we share that with principals. But I also, as fast as we need to go, we need to understand that and think about the reason is because we have federal dollars to invest in curriculum for the first time in over 10 years. I heard that when I got here, that our principals, our staff saying we don't have a curriculum. Where, if you recall, teacher pay teacher, they're buying materials. Now we've made an investment, so it is going to take time, and we're cognizant of the time that we need. But it's, we're doing summer professional learning for ELA curriculum that was just adopted. So it is now our educators have curriculum that's aligned to the standards. So not that they need to teach in a cookie cutter, but at least it's aligned and they'll be able to do that. So I wanted you, as you're talking about, it reminds me of that it's the, our for the first time, our ninth graders will have an English language arts curriculum that our teachers will be able to teach. That is investment of this district because of the federal dollars. So we're going to be closing those gaps as soon as we can. But I just wanted, to capitalize on making that reminder, or reminding all of us of why so many folks are overwhelmed in schools, because everything is coming because of the federal investment.
Thank you, Dr. Jara. Certainly, I understand what it means to be overwhelmed, but not at the level that our educators are. But I empathize, and I know you do too, and I know our board does too, with the fast pace at which change is happening. And At the same time, really grateful to everyone who chooses to do this work, right? Because as we're thinking about this, I can't help but to think about the system that, yes, we talked about one piece, remediation, but we need to retain our workforce. We need to make sure that we recruit quality educators, that licensed personnel, staff at all levels to help us build this system up. And so again, just simply encouraged and look forward to what this presentation will look like in a year from now and moving forward. A lot of work to do. And yes, to the 6.2 years for students who graduate from college, it is a, what do I want to say around that? That is a, and that does not account for first-generation students. And navigating the college pathway, dual credit is one piece, but it does not help a student walk through the very intricate steps, especially if it's a first-generation student, to help them enroll in college. It's one thing to have intent and dual enrollment, but actually enrolling is a whole nother story. Now, do we have any word from the state in terms of when the college readiness assessment will be available to our educators so that we can prepare our students and prepare ourselves for what's next? Dr. Jara?
Madam President, members of the board, no, we do not, but we can get that information next week when we are with the state superintendent.
Absolutely, that is especially necessary since we are about a month away from 2 months from the start of school year. And our sophomores or juniors need a assessment, and we need to be prepared for that. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. It seems like my colleagues are all questioned. Oh, thank you for that. Yes. Trustee Guzman, do you have any questions at this time?
I just have one, and it's kind of a follow-up from last year's update. I'm just wondering if we have built more systems in place with NSHE to make sure that our educators are able to provide the curriculum that we need. I remember last year asking about Nevada State College and their requirements. And so I'm just wondering if we have moved forward with that, and if all of the systems have the same requirements for educators to provide dual enrollment.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Guzman, that's a great question. So it's ongoing work. Every institution has their own set of standards for how they credential educators. So it really depends on the institution that we're speaking of. I think we have a long ways to go in this space, but I think we definitely have leaders that are recognizing that this ultimately ends up being an access and equity issue if we are not identifying pathways for educators to be credentialed. So I think we're doing a lot of work. We've made significant progress, particularly in this last year. But I think that if I'm speaking very bluntly, it requires us identifying the why. And the why is ensuring that we have more students going on to college and we have more students being successful in college. And that only happens if they get some early access to advanced level coursework. So anything that we can do to remove those barriers and create clear pathways for that expansion of these opportunities to happen, I'm hoping that eventually we'll all be on board with that.
Thank you. That was my only question because Trustee Cavazos asked the rest of mine, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, everyone. I do not have, forgive me, I did not offer an opportunity for members of the public, if they wish to speak on this item, to speak on it. This is an action item because we either accept or reject. We have an opportunity to create a motion on this item. I don't see any public comment cards. Let's see, and I don't have any people who have signed up in advance. So at this time, colleagues, I'd like to request a motion. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I move to approve item 3.01, formative board report.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Williams?
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much for your time and presentation today. All right, colleagues, we are going to move on to item 4.01. All right. We are ready to move on to item 4.01, appointment of a member to fill an unexpired term on the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control, or NIAA. This is, before I continue on with this item, I'd like to ask members of the public if they have, if they would like to speak on this item, they are welcome to submit a yellow card. Okay. This is this opportunity for us to discuss and have possible action on the appointment of a new member to the NIAA to replace Amy Wagner, whose term expires on June 30th, 2025. Okay. The request is for Principal Colin McNaught to be appointed for the remainder of the term. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I would like to make a motion at this time to approve 4.01, appointment of a member to fill an unexpired term on the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control, of which I am a member also. It's a great board, a lot of work. It's really important who we appoint. And I would just like to say that I am honored to approve Principal Colin McNaught for this approval. I should say nominate for approval to make that correct. And I believe that Principal McNaught might be in the audience tonight. Oh, he doesn't want to stand up. He's just going to wave here. And this is Principal McNaught from Go Cimarron Memorial. And that's my motion.
All right. And forgive me, Trustee Cavazos, before I fully accept your motion, I want to make sure the note that there is no public comment on this item. Okay?
Okay.
Perfect. So let's move on to Trustee Zamora.
I would like to second that motion.
Excellent. Thank you, colleagues. At this time, we have a motion by Trustee Cavazos and a second by Trustee Zamora. Colleagues, please cast your vote. And Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, that motion passes. Did I miss? That motion passes 6-0, noting Trustee Williams has stepped away for a moment. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you very much for your service. Okay, I'm ready to celebrate, and we weren't prepared to celebrate. Next time we will be. All right, colleagues, we're going to move on to item 4.02, please. That is Assembly Bill 175 of the 82nd session of the Nevada Legislature. This is a discussion and possible action regarding the AB 175. And so at this time, I actually would, colleagues, I'd like to first of all, before I move on and provide remarks and make a motion, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Okay. Let's move forward actually with public comment. There are two individuals who've signed up in advance for this public comment, and I don't have any yellow cards at this time, so I welcome them. Let's see, we're going to move on to public comment. Mr. Bayless, welcome. And then followed by Mr. Bayless, Mr. James Frazee. Welcome.
Hi, James Bayless for the record. So obviously you're not going to get the packet. You don't want to get up, so that's fine.
Mr. Bayless, that is completely inappropriate, and I'm
Well,
not going
so
to
it's
allow
trying to
you
hide
to be
paperwork, but we'll-
disrespectful to our
okay.
staff. If
Can
that
you
is
stop my time if you're gonna go
no,
hold it?
will you please stop being disrespectful to our staff?
Well, you guys have been disrespectful to my kid for a long time, so
Mr.
let's
Bayless.
be real.
Mr. Bayless.
Okay, so moving along. So this paperwork that you're going to receive is the OJJ grant, that we've been talking about for a while. Did you know that Washington, D.C. now has a copy of Clark County's OJJ grant? Judicial Committee, they've been actually holding it in the news for a while. Did you know they called that grant a domestic terrorist against parents? Because that came at me 13 times. That grant right there came at my house, my child, 13 times.
Mr. Bayless, please
Yes?
help me connect it to AB 175.
I thought we were at public comment.
No,
You
not
swapped it,
yet.
didn't you?
No, this is item AB 175.
Oh, the legislature? Well, that's ironic because the 175 AB was part of the 256 that Daniel's colleagues were trying to cover up this paperwork. So that's kind of ironic. Okay, that works. So legislature part of what we're talking about, and also one of Daniel's colleagues went up and was trying to ironically hide this same paperwork in a nice CA file I have that explains how somebody got to a high power to be. So within the situations of hand, the legislature is very familiar with what's going on with my son. They enjoyed the presentations you guys gave because they were really, really quite pertinent due to the fact that a couple of our legislature people, like Mr. Stone, since he's from Henderson, like I am, has been BCC'd in a lot of my conversations with Daniel since he's part of the Judicial Committee and reports to Jim Jordan. So just letting you guys know that a lot of things are pretty jacked up. Like you said, you guys want respect, but so does my son. We don't get it, but why do you demand it? That's kind of not right. So I understand the hypocritical situations that I be. Do as I say, not as I do. But when you call a parent a terrorist, don't you find that to highly be disrespectful? I would. When you call a kid a terrorist, wouldn't you find that highly to be disrespectful? I think he would, especially since we're both disabled children of this system that's obviously been, what was the word you used? Disrespected? Have a good one.
Mr. Frazee?
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished trustees, Superintendent Jara. For the record, my name is Jim Frazee. I'm a high school teacher here in Clark County, and I also have the honor of being vice president of your largest bargaining unit, CCEA. CCA has said to this body many times, either change or change will be coming. And change is now law. And I would say to you that observing what happened in Carson City, it wasn't the change that came of this law wasn't aimed at any individuals. It was aimed at this body's inability, it seems, to manage its one employee. I would say this law, having been up in Carson City quite a few times, would not have been possible if it wasn't for Dr. Jara's presentation and the anger and disgust that was received by members of the legislature. I say that because the distinguished P.K. O'Neill, the minority leader of the Assembly, after hearing the presentation, simply said, I am so glad, and I'll paraphrase, I'm so glad none of my children ever went to CCSD. As a member, a working member who's put 17 years in CCSD, that broke my heart. That made me very upset because that's not who we are. You do not have to like the fact that this bill is now law. I would suggest that you understand why people felt it necessary to make it law. I ask you to understand why hundreds of thousands of people signed a petition to break up CCSD. And if that is not a fresh awakening to what is going on and change going forward, then I'm worried. I have a lot of faith in this body. Okay, and Madam President, I think you have always found me respectful. And even the people that I have disagreed with, that I have not attacked personally. But I would ask this body to really examine where it's going forward. CCEA looks forward to working with the municipalities of Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Henderson, and the Clark County Commission to find qualified people sit up here with you. And I thank you for your time.
Colleagues, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that with the passing of AB 175, which adds 4 non-voting members appointed by Clark County, the Clark County Commission, the City of Las Vegas, the City of North Las Vegas, and Boulder City. Before we fully move forward and implement the legislation, I'd like to ask the board to support researching our options as it pertains to AB 175 and ensure that no harm comes to the children of our school district with which we are in charge of. Trustee Williams.
Madam President, I just want you to, would you be able to clarify your motion just a little bit? Because I want to know what, so the community knows where our intention lies is not to break the law, but our intention is always to support the children of Clark County first and foremost. So I just want to hear your motion, if you could just kind of lay it out.
My motion is that with the intent to ensure that we protect the children of our school district, which we are entrusted to protect, that we research our options as it pertains to the implementation of AB 175. Is that?
Yes, thank you. I will go ahead and second then.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Okay, colleagues, at this time, we have a motion by me and a second by Trustee Williams. I'd like to ask you to please vote. Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
Thank you. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 5.01, that is public comment on items not listed as agenda items. This is the time if you have not called in advance and however would like to call in advance to sign up for the public speaker list and you would like to provide public comment, please complete a yellow card and provide it to our staff. We're going to begin with Mr. Bayless. Is he still here? Okay. Okay. Followed by Mr. Bayless, we're going to go with Angie Pompa. Followed by Tom Zumtabel. Okay, Mr. Bayless is coming back, but I'd like to provide Angie an opportunity to. Oh, Mr. Bayless. May she? Yeah, please.
So James Bayless for the record. So now we're at public comment about this packet that you guys have on your desk. You'll be surprised that this is the OJJ grant that came out of this building of last year. The one that attacked my family 13 times. Within that package, you'll see the list of Daniel Ibarra's paperwork, and you'll see a screenshot of a website. That's a link that comes from the Pro Bono project. That's on his profile over in Lincoln. You click it, it goes right to the DOJ. So I guess the DOJ grant is Daniel Ibarra's. You know, the one that's been attacking every parent, child services, put a lot of parents in jail, tried to do me twice, tried to get my kid twice. But it's weird, because you know why? That program's a truancy program. So which means August 25th, when you guys withdrew my kid, you guys violated that program in itself. You used it 13 times against me, then used it to violate and pull a kid out and have complete crickets is weird, considering that's from the DOJ. That is the Department of Justice truancy program. So if the truancy program was used against us when it benefits you, but is not available for us when we need them, wouldn't that be considered grant fraud once again? Because, again, I've reached out to the truancy program. They said they have no power of the situation. Trying to get my kid back into school. Nobody seems to want to do that, but you guys talk on camera a lot how you enjoy the graduation rates. Yeah, it sucks my kid ain't going to be able to graduate in 24 because of the situation. He was supposed to have been graduating a year early if you look at his year of birth. But instead now, we're going to have a kid that's 3 years behind. He was ahead, and now he's behind. But no kid left behind, right? Isn't that what your guys' greatest motto is on every camera known to man? If that's the case, then one would say that'd be false advertising, wouldn't it? Definitely misrepresentation. So you guys have a good one.
Ms. Pompa, please come on up.
Hi, Angie Pompa for the record. I'm a little bit nervous. Never gotten up and spoke before. My reason and my why today are my 3 deaf grandchildren, ages 4, 3, and 1. The oldest has just completed 2 years at the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program at Harris, which they're phenomenal. I'm just grateful for them. But what I've been noticing as we're a hearing family and we've got 3 deaf children, now a new diagnosis, there is a huge gap between when you get your diagnosis for your deaf child to when they start your program at 3 years old. That is the space I'm trying to figure out how to help and what we can do for these kids. My grandchildren suffered terribly. The oldest one tore out a third of her hair before she got to school, got the language, and we were going above and beyond from what most traditional, what happens. We have all 7 adults signing in our family. We've been taking lessons. We've been doing all the things, and they still suffered. Allow me to share a few statistics with you that actually shook me to the core. The first and foremost would be linguistic deprivation. As looking into this and learning about it, if these children do not receive frequent accessible language before 4 years old, they may never achieve fluency in any language, which can stunt their cognitive development. My grandchildren are already behind, already. And when they get to us at 3 years old, instead of learning at that point, they're going backwards, learning sign language, trying to do all these things. 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents, as our family. And the frightening thing to me is 70% never learn to sign. These children grow up in homes that no one communicates with them. Then what happens is we then send them home for the summer. They are alone. And I don't have the answers. I am not an educator, but I do as a family member. Our family blew up when we got these diagnoses, and we were trying, everyone was trying, doing everything we could. These children end up in isolation terribly. These deaf children are born with the same IQ as hearing children, and they end up aging out of our system with a 4th or 5th grade reading level. And I know if this wasn't a hearing child, we would be outraged. When you have a 4th or 5th grade reading level, there's no way to translate over into a working world where only 50% of deaf adults work. The other 50% are employable for life. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your testimony today, Ms. Pompa. Tom? Followed by Jim Frazee and Michael Gahn. And then I've got a yellow card for Ernest McKay.
Good evening. Madam Chair, Superintendent Jara, and the trustees, thank you very much for letting me give you an update tonight. I'm so proud of representing the teachers and of the work that we've done. I just have gratitude for continuing to serve the Clark County educators. We consistently have achieved our service and financial objectives. Over the past 18 months, we've maintained positive financial results while paying claims timely and building cash reserves. Our confidence remains high at our ability to meet our obligation regarding the $35 million repayment by the school district. Our priority has been to establish a culture of consistency and service. We've implemented standard operating procedures and policies to eliminate exceptions and manage administrative costs. We monitor our performance and our service with intention. In the last several months, I haven't received any direct emails from educators that needed my assistance. It's an indication of our hard work and your commitment is paying off. There was a time when I received emails every single night and every weekend, constantly, and I also received them from you all the time. And I just haven't received them recently. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but I'm just very proud of the work we've had to done. And the reason I'm up here is to share my email again with all the teachers, because we want them to contact us if they have problems, because just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's working. Maybe they don't know that we want to help. So for the record, my email address is tomzumtbell@phthealth.org. And I'm available for anybody, any educator that needs help or anybody that you want to direct over to us. If people want help, we're certainly able to figure out how to help them. As we approach the upcoming open enrollment season, we really look forward to communicating next year's benefits. At this time, we currently have no plans for any benefit change. We're not planning to change the network or any of the vendors. And also, we would like to start the communication July 31st. The communication campaign for open enrollment is our current plan. It's all contingent on the negotiations being finalized, but we're optimistic and really believe that we're in a good position to continue to serve your education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zumtebel. Mr. Frazee.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished trustees, Superintendent Jara. For the record, Jim Frazee, again, classroom teacher, CCA Vice President. I come to you today to speak about the lack of progress that has been, the lack of urgency during negotiations between our bargaining units. And we have come to the table. This is the first time that we have ever had an idea before Carson City closed what kind of money we would be getting. We wanted to address some of these issues in March and April, and we came to the district and asked to have a serious conversation. The district was completely unprepared. And it's been hard to get dates for us to meet. It is now going on the end of June. We are supposed to come back in early August, the start of August, and there is no emphasis on negotiations. And you can smirk at me all you like, sir and Madam President, but perhaps this is the attitude that educators see from you, and have 75% said they have no trust in you. So I would ask some basic decency, but apparently that is a bit too much to ask. So I am saying to you, like I have said several years ago, that when we come together in August, if there is not a contract, we are not waiting around to December as in the last 2 years. This should have been done. This should be set before we come back to school in August. And I ask you, before any more people leave, that you put a priority on our negotiations. I thank you for your time.
I too have come before you. My name is Michael Jan, teacher, Centennial High School. No other bargaining unit, and certainly not your one employee, has the credibility that CCA has to help advance the legislation in this past legislative session, especially after the disastrous performance at the Joint Legislative Committee, where the chair of the Ways and Means Committee first comment to your one employee was, "You failed my children." I was embarrassed for him, for all of you, for all of us, and it went downhill from there. It was a sad, sad, and pathetic performance. Comes time for negotiations. Again, as my colleague, Mr. Frazee, said, no sense of urgency, no seriousness. Your superintendent prefers to play silly little games with CCEA, dragging this out. We're not waiting around to November, to December. we are prepared to do what we need to do. Are you prepared to do what you need to do? Again, it's not unreasonable to actually expect a contract before you start work. It's how the world operates. I know CCSD doesn't seem to operate in the world. There's two ways of doing things, the way the rest of the world does and the way we do it here. And maybe that's part of the problem. You didn't necessarily believe CCA's poll. 75% people don't trust Dr. Jara from CCA. Your own poll said the same thing. When are you going to listen to the people you say you care about and you say you supposedly serve? I see you looking away. I see you smirking, trying to cover up, laughing. That's the attitude you wish to present to the community. Not much I can do to stop you. But I would like to see some progress on this contract negotiation. Because unlike your one employee, we prefer progress we can actually see.
Before I move on to the next public comment, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge my colleague who is in the queue, and I typically don't do this, but because this is the public comment period. But Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. I recognize, well, I was just going to make a different statement because I thought we were moving on to a different section, but I was just going to say I recognize that while people may be frustrated, I would encourage teachers and parents alike to email their prospective trustees and executive directors and presidents and ask questions. While this is a public comment period, they can come to the board and talk to us all they want. I would encourage you to reach out to us and speak to us directly.
Thank you. Let's see, we have, it looks like we've got our papers mixed up here. Oh, Mr. Mackey, right? Did I get that right? Ernest Mackey, come on through, please. Look forward to your public comment. Welcome. And I think that's all we've got.
My name is Ernest Mackey. I'm here to address the board members once again. Have not been reached out to once again. I've been stopped after the last meeting out in the hall, but nothing else after that. Our kids are still being messed with and harassed. I haven't got no response from your superintendent that should be reaching out to us. This matter needs to be addressed, and just like your own coworker is talking about, this board needs to start taking action. It needs to start now. Your rules and conduct says you react immediately. I haven't seen it. Harassment, retaliation. Your rules and regulations say you all don't tolerate it and you act immediately. I haven't seen it. This issue been going on almost for a year now, and you all haven't even reached out, especially Miss Lena. I think I'm saying that right. Can't see
Mr.
that.
Mackey, please refer to your comments
But
to all members of the
Shell's
board.
in District G. I made several calls to your office also, Mr. Jar. No response, saying we're not going to talk to you until you go through the superintendent. That's no help. Here I am again. All the harassment and retaliation need to stop. I'm going to get with your coworker, and we're going to do some more petitions. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6.01, upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees. Colleagues, the next meeting, members of the public, the next meeting is June 22nd at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom. Colleagues, at this time, I'm seeking a motion to adjourn. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. This time I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Zamora.
I'll second that motion.
Great, thank you, trustee Zamora. Colleagues, we have a motion by trustee Williams, a second by trustee Zamora. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you, trustee Guzman. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you for your time tonight, and wishing you a great night. The meeting is over at 6:18 p.m.